Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, guys, today's date, September 22nd, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan. On the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, this is a family-friendly podcast. We try to watch our language sometimes, but sometimes words will fly, and then sometimes things of a graphic nature that may be too intense for younger viewers may come across your screen, so viewer discretion is advised. Now, let's go ahead and get into it, folks, because it's going to be kind of interesting today. We're first going to start with this, open warfare. And I know when you say open warfare, it's a little hard to believe, but apparently it's between Democrats and Republicans. For anybody that hasn't been paying attention or you've been under a rock, top Democrats are warning that President Joe Biden's agenda is entering a massive decisive moment. Keep in mind, this is the major infrastructure package that is basically going to be overhauled just because simple fact of the matter is just that, guys, how can I put this several so ways? That we've been ignoring America's problems for so long that it takes almost nearly $4.5 trillion of problems to fix them. Yes, $4.5 trillion with a T. And of course, as you can see right here, of course, you do notice in the Democratic House that the issue is going to be between the moderates, like good old Joe Manchin, and the progressives, like AOC, who are basically saying that, it's within the Democratic Party that moderates are not willing to spend a lot of money while progressives are willing to spend as much as humanly possible, which I can understand from the progressive side of things is that you do have to spend. Why? Because America has been kicking their problems down the can for at least about a good 50 years. I mean, when you think about pipes, when you think about roads, bridges, tunnels, I lost words for a second. Our fiber optic network, our internet services are woefully degrading. And the simple fact of the matter is, they need to be upkept. They need to be brought up to speed. And had we actually been doing this from Jump Street, we would not be looking at a $3.5 trillion price tag, which modern Democrats are saying, oh, well, we can't really spend that much. Keep in mind what I've always said about moderate Democrats. Moderate Democrats are just Republican light. Because you would think spending, whenever you hear spending, you would think to myself, you would think conservatives. Conservatives hate the word spending unless they actually do it, and then they find some justified mess up reason for them to say they did it. Democrats, on the other hand, when they spend, it's like the only time you hear, well, they're gonna control spending. And let's be honest, in this day and age, with everything that's going on in America, $3.5 trillion is a budget cut, considering the fact that realistically we need to be spending at least $6 trillion. That was from the Congressional Budget Office estimates. But Joe Manchin and the rest of the moderate Democrats are threatening to derail this entire thing. And let's be honest, if that happens in this day and age, then that could mess up a lot of things for the Democrats going down the road. But I have said this. Because the Democrats, during Trump's presidency, they ran on this entire thing of, we can do it better than Dorito. We can get things passed. We can increase and I'm like, and I hate to say this, Democrats, because this all falls under you guys. Because look at your campaign promises. We want to raise the minimum wage. Minimum wage hasn't been raised. We want to, do something about college debt. In some cases, that's kind of half true, because some people under certain conditions have had their college debt actually wiped out. At the same time, we want to do something about police. Do you understand that the police reform bill is now dead in the water? Because again, for some odd reason, law enforcement has to have rights. Who knew? And we can keep going down this list. I mean, let's not forget that the fact that now we're dealing with an Afghan troop, the fallout from pulling out of Afghanistan. You were bringing over refugees from Afghanistan. Then that was a whole mess. Let's not also forget the fact that you still have issues in Mexico, because remember that Mexico still has people at their border, and now you have Haiti, which after they've had that terrible natural disaster there, are now starting to flood into the U.S. to basically leave other areas. Guys, this is a lot. It is a lot, and you think from the Democratic side of things that they should be able to go ahead and sit there and be like, you know what, this is our time to shine. This is our time to be humanitarians. This is our time to increase the minimum wage. This is our time to get things passed. Even with the slim majority, and I say slim because they need all 50 votes in the Senate, good old mansion, and you need every vote that you can get in the House, good old AOC. So again, I ask this question all the time, Democrats, and it's like, why can't you do what Republicans did? Why can't you do what Republicans do? I can't stand Republicans because the Republican Party is so extreme that's not even funny. But the one thing they do very well that they never fail in, everybody toes the party line. When it's time for them to vote, it is all in. You very rarely have deflectors. So if there's one thing you can say about Republicans, they toe the party line when things to get done. But Democrats, I don't know what it is. And I know what it is. Because as the Democratic Party changes, they are becoming more progressive. They are not middle of the road anymore. You'll have very little centrist and moderate Democrats left, just because they're starting to sound more conservative by the day, especially with Joe Manchin, who still believes in bipartisanship. Keep in mind, and I've said this before on many different podcasts, folks, he is the present to Republicans right now. Because had Joe Manchin been on board with everything, no telling how many things the Democrats could have got passed. But keep in mind, Republicans aren't going to do nobody any favors. Now, why is that? Because they know next year is the midterm elections. So they're going to dig their feet in. They're going to oppose everything the Democrats want to do. And I just hope for people that remember this, when the Republicans go back to running, ask them what they did this entire run so far of the Biden-Harris administration. Because you'll be very hard-pressed to find Republicans did next to nothing. Which, I gotta love that. Imagine having a job that you get paid for when all you do is oppose what the other person says and you get to go home. That's gotta be amazing. But then again, you never heard of such thing as a broke politician. But we will keep an eye on that in the infrastructure package bill to see where it comes to. Congress did eventually pass a stopgap measure to keep the government running until sometime in October. So again, the same old story, especially when it comes to the debt ceiling. Like, the debt ceiling needs to be raised because Congress has been spending. But if we think about where Congress has been spending and start looking at other places like the military and the Pentagon and things of that nature and realize that a majority of our budget goes to them, imagine we cut them down to just a third and where the rest of that money can go. But that's just my 2 cents on that. But anyway, like I said before, speaking of things that need to be talked about, this, unfortunately, was the video that was shown near the Texas border because, again, we're a nation of immigrants, and yet we treat every other immigrant... Well, let's just watch the video.
Questions tonight about this video appearing to show Border Patrol agents confronting refugees aggressively on the Rio Grande.
I don't think anyone seeing that footage would think it was acceptable or appropriate.
The conditions under the International Bridge in Del Rio, Texas, a border town 150 miles west of San Antonio, also raising eyebrows.
Have you seen anything like this before?
No, this is the first.
Thousands of migrants living in makeshift huts, sleeping in the dirt, waiting their turn to get processed by U.S. immigration authorities, a sight DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas witnessed today.
If you come to the United States illegally, you will be returned. Your journey will not succeed, and you will be endangering your life and your family's lives.
So right now we're going down to the International Bridge here in Del Rio.
CNN rode along with Lieutenant Christopher Olivares with the Texas Department of Public Safety.
So right now we're here at one of the, this is the main area that they were crossing.
Our first stop, an area where from the air, CNN cameras had captured migrants crossing freely just days earlier.
They were crossing to and from the U.S. via this dam. Just take a look. That's Mexico. You can see the flag flying.
And now the flow has stopped. Olivares says this sea of Texas state troopers helped secure the river.
So just be careful.
And moments later, we see the shocking scene under the Del Rio International Bridge. Thousands of migrants, mostly Haitians, say officials, living in squalor, like James Centillas, who says he left his home country for Chile in 2015 with his wife and 2 children.
He says that someone assaulted him in Haiti and someone shot at his aunt.
And 2 months ago, they started the trek to the United States.
You say that the route is open to enter in the United States. What does that mean? Family, friends, he says. Que dijeron la frontera está abierta, the border is open?
Sí, tengo muchas personas. Primo.
Tillis's voice breaks as he talks about his family.
Why is it so painful?
Porque estamos sufriendo acá, estamos sufriendo.
Because you're suffering.
He says food is hard to come by and the weather is tough to bear.
If you look closely, you'll see that these are men, women, children. I see pregnant women, infants.
Border Patrol's top cop announcing this weekend a surge of 600 agents, officers, and other personnel.
Why Del Rio? Why now? What does your intelligence tell you?
Traditionally, it's because of word of mouth. Certainly what happened this time is that number doubled and then tripled relatively quickly.
And to expedite processing, removal flights to Haiti have increased, says Border Patrol. And word about this is spreading quickly under the bridge.
You don't want to return to Haiti. It's too difficult, you say.
Where the immigration waiting room into the U.S. is quickly turning into a gate back to Haiti.
After Secretary Mayorkas viewed that controversial footage of Border Patrol agents on horseback, DHS issuing this statement that says, in part, the Department of Homeland Security does not tolerate the abuse of migrants in our custody, and we take these allegations very seriously. U.S. Customs and Border Protection's Office of Professional Responsibility is investigating the matter and has alerted the DHS Office of Inspector General. Aaron?
There are no words. None. I mean, everybody by now has seen that footage, and everybody by now has literally looked at it and said, what's different from when they were chasing our ancestors in slavery? And I've said this before in my Facebook post. I say it again now. I do not understand immigration. I do not understand that from a nation of immigrants, we're against immigration. For example, it's not like we have a vacancy problem. I will always say this. It's not like America has a vacancy issue. Trust me, you've been around some states, you'll notice there's plenty of room. And we were so willing to bring in Afghan refugees that have assisted us in the war in Afghanistan. But for some odd reason, just like Mexico, same deal. People were fleeing cartels, were fleeing famine, were fleeing all of these things just to come to America for a fair shot. Haitians were doing the same thing. Again, I don't understand that. What is the typical response to immigration is to go ahead and instead of sending immigration lawyers, judges, court personnel, medical care for these people, it's like, why are these things not being done? But you're sending, like they said enforcement agents. Let's be honest. They're very sure of calling the National Guard at this point. But they send armed responses. Explain to me that. I've always wanted to ask somebody, explain to me this, why whenever it comes to immigration, we always meet it with force. We always meet it with no. Or even the Department of Homeland Security just 2 days ago sat there and said, if you come from Haiti, you will not be welcome here. Says a lot when you have Ellis Island over in the corner. Remember what it says over there? Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe. Your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The tempest torn and things of that nature. And I don't remember the whole quote, but again, the whole point of that entire thing was welcome immigration. And I used to sit there and say a long time ago, it's only because these people have black and brown faces that a lot of people don't like that, because that means that America changes. Newsflash, America already has changed. That the Mayo people out there, and they know who I'm talking about, along with the raccoons out there know what I'm talking about, the face of America is changing. And like the generations that are coming forward are not the generations of old. That yes, there is more diversity, there is more culture out there. And a lot of people don't like that. But you think by stopping people who have decided to come over for a better life is going to stop that? I'm sorry. This is the one thing about progress. You can't stop progress. Progress will happen whether you like it or not. You can either go along with the wave or you can get trampled over it. One of the two. But there is no excuse from the Border Patrol side of things for them to sit there and say, oh, well, the person getting whipped by a guy on horseback, that's completely, I mean, that's abusive. No kidding. But to alert the office of the Inspector General, here's the thing: what more can be done except asking for except asking for the AG to step in? Unless the AG steps in and literally overrules Border Patrol, I doubt it's going to happen. And don't expect because it's Texas, Greg Abbott's going to help. He's too busy electing. He's too busy putting up walls, which is certain former president is going to love to hear, even though the fact that Mexico's not paying for it. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this story that, again, I did cover last podcast in the weekend review that the week before last, they were actually going to have a rally, and I cannot believe I'm saying this. They were having a rally for the insurrectionists. The ones that on January 6th decided to become terrorists and storm a Capitol building, and they had a rally for it. And of course, this did bring up all types of chatter, a lot of warnings, things that nature are going to happen. However, during one conversation, one individual, it just goes to show you how far we've come along or how far some of us have fallen short.
And to talk to some of the rally goers, and it was very interesting to hear what some of them have to say. Of course, they believe that there was no insurrection, that people were just merely going in the Capitol, perhaps maybe trespassing, but none of them, certainly the ones that were here, felt it was as serious as it really was. Take a listen to what one of the people who was attending here, when I was asking him questions about that day, take a listen to what he said.
It's a public building. I mean, people have been held all this time. I think the most severe charge any of them has is trespassing.
But there are some who are charged with assaulting officers.
Those are lies.
So you don't believe the video? On video, they're seen assaulting police officers. You don't think that happened? You think that's
Show me that video.
You haven't seen video?
No.
You haven't seen officers being dragged on the ground?
No.
You haven't seen that video?
No.
You haven't
Please show me if it exists.
And so, Jim, we did. And my producer, Matt Friedman here, we pulled up the video, we showed it to him, and take a listen to what else he had to say about that.
He's pushing back with an open hand. He's not even moving his hand quickly. That's not assault, no.
So you don't think what they're doing here is an assault?
He could easily back up.
That's a police officer.
Yeah, he could easily back up.
So it's the officers?
No, this is not assault.
And Jim, that was that video that was seen by so many people, key evidence in this investigation, where you're seeing the insurrectionists pushing, slamming the door against those officers. But that wasn't the only video. There are other videos where we see officers on the ground being dragged. It just seems, Jim, that it would take almost a miracle to convince some of the people who were here that this was a very serious situation. They all have downplayed it. In this instance, this individual blaming the police for what happened, and sort of they should have just gotten out of the way.
And this is why I sit there and say that you're not going to be able to convince everybody, especially those who still believe that, what those terrorists did on January 6th wasn't terrorism. You should look on his face. Oh, that's not assault. He wasn't pushing against his hand. Yes, the infamous picture of that man being pinned. And I don't know if you ever noticed, but if you ever been pinned between a door and you have both opposing forces, or I should say one side where you have a whole bunch of those domestic terrorists pushing on the door and he's in the middle because he can't squeeze out, that's not, oh, well, he's just pressing against the door. No, he's being pinned. And if you've been pinned against two things and you like the bologna between two pieces of bread, it is not a pleasant thing. But then again, just to report on that rally, it didn't really get the number of attendance it expected. However, it was good them on the safe side with the concrete barriers and the fencing and the added police force. It's almost as if they finally started to take white domestic people seriously when they sit there and say they're going to storm something. Who knew? But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this as well. I did talk about this story. I did actually talk about this story that actually occurred last week. Again, with New York actually putting up forward that they are going to go ahead and start introducing vaccine mandates. And I sat there and told a story of a woman who was simply doing her job, at a New York restaurant, and the people didn't like the fact that proof vaccines were required. They couldn't approve it, and of course this led to a fight. There's finally video on it.
Cell phone video shows several women involved in a scuffle that almost knocked over the hostess stand at Carmines Restaurant on Broadway and West 91st Street around 5 last night.
I saw her like scratches on the neck.
This turned into a mess. And from there, it's unexcusable, ridiculous.
Carmine's owner says a 24-year-old hostess who just started working here weeks ago was punched, slapped, and her necklace ripped off when she asked a group of diners to show proof of COVID-19 vaccinations, a city policy to eat indoors.
Our employee, thankfully, is safe right now. She's extremely shook up. 2 other people had minor issues.
Those 2 other people were waiters who stepped in to help and also got hurt in the brawl.
That's crazy.
A physical fight with the person who is doing just her job, it's not okay.
I'm into protecting yourself if somebody attacks you, but I'm definitely not into violence.
Police say 3 women from Texas, a 49-year-old, a 44-year-old, and her 21-year-old daughter were taken into custody, given desk appearance tickets, and released. Manhattan's borough president is calling on the city and state to implement harsher penalties.
Do not assault restaurant workers who are doing their job to keep us safe. I can't believe this happened here. We have to increase the fines if that's what it takes.
Carmine's owner says he has no problem with the vaccine mandate and prepared staff to deal with unruly customers and possible pushback, but never expected this.
We ID for 21-year-olds all the time for bar. We've done training weeks before this talking about the enforcement.
Now Carmine's owner says he has no option but to pay for security to monitor the front entrance to keep his staff safe. On the Upper West Side, Natalie Duddridge, CBS 2 News.
Crazy, isn't it? I mean, now of course it's like, you're in New York. You already know if you're going to New York, Mayor de Blasio has already said it. Every place you go is going to require your vaccine requirement. You should know this by now. This isn't new. The fact that, despite it, I can't imagine that, well, let me take this back, because I forgot, because I live in Tennessee. Folks are already freaking out about a mask mandate. Let me stress this very carefully. Folks in one of the highest states that have the highest percentages for COVID cases right now, that hospitalization rates are among the top in the country, if not the world, freak out at a mask mandate. You only imagine if masks are the problem. Imagine if every other restaurant place out there starts saying, hey, we're going to start needing a vaccine. We're going to have a proof of vaccine, that you're going to have proof that you're vaccinated. In Tennessee, that's going to be causing chaos. Oh, well, I'm not going to come here. I'm American, I have the right. And it's always amazing to me that whenever you hear something that goes against your grain, well, I'm gonna tell you what, that's not am I right as an American? I got the freedom to do whatever I want to do. You do. It has nothing to do with the situation, but you do. But at the same time, just like you got freedoms, those business owners and people else have freedoms. And you can't knock a service worker for just doing their job. Although I can't blame the owner. The owner's going to have to hire security now. Why? Because some folks are going to believe that they can just put hands on everybody. It's the reason why I'm not in the restaurant industry, because somebody put hands on me, I'm going to be fired, because sure, sticks and stones may break my sticks. I'm like, you can say everything you want to say to me, cool. But the moment you put hands on me, open season, for that matter. But again, makes no sense, and it's really, truly sad as far as that goes. But other thing I want to cover, because again, like I said, going back to Texas for a little bit, because Texas right now is the king of the hold my beer situation. There is now a third special legislative session in Texas right now, and it's over trans rights. If you were still following your bingo card for, WTF America 2021, and if you had Texas down for voting rights, abortion, and trans rights, you're halfway there to winning. So Texas lawmakers, as of this week, have decided to go ahead and conquer certain topics. One of them including transgender student participation in sports and healthcare for trans use. I told you guys this was bound to happen. I have said it before. I'll say it again. This was bound to happen. Texas, because of some extreme religious and conservative views, have decided to take it upon themselves because what they're going to do with is they're basically going to institute that transgenders can't play. Oh, can't play on the identity they identify. Obviously, that was wrong. What Texas is attempting to try to do is they're trying to ban the fact that transgender athletes cannot play on the team of the sex that they identify. They have to play on the team that they were assigned to at birth. And they're gonna sit there and say, because this is the conservative view of it all, that we're protecting women. In Texas, you're protecting women. You can almost hear the hypocritical BS come from the other side, considering the fact that you guys just implemented an abortion law which abortions are illegal after 6 months, that the Supreme Court still has yet to strike down. It is amazing to me that you're worried. This is where you're. If I was in Texas, I'm like, this is where my tax dollars go to these idiots. You are so worried, number one, about what a woman does with her body. You are so worried about athletes who just want to play in the sports with the other sexes they identify, and you are so worried about immigration that, damn everything else apparently. Like, ask yourselves one question, Texas: why are y'all the only state? Why are you the only state in the U.S. that is not a part of the national power grid? I was like, how could you live in Texas? Texas independently has its own power grid where they charge people a boatload of money just for power. I mean, I can sit here and complain about Nashville all the time, but at least we're on the grid. But Texas, I don't even want to imagine. Like, well, I did cover a few months back when Texas got hit with that snowstorm. I did cover the $3,000, $5,000, and sometimes $10,000 electric bills that those folks were getting. So again, I just don't get what I said before on this podcast. I've said it before on my off-limits podcast. You can't stop trans athletes. I'm gonna tell you why. Number one, money. The NCAA is backing them. The WNBA is backing them. And let's be honest, those are two things right there. And I guess women's soccer is backing them. So eventually, guys, one of two things is bound to happen, because you can't say it's about protecting women. Because here's the thing: if you don't let the trans athletes play in the sex that they identify with, then the alternative is to do segregation. Which, again, when me and my girlfriend were talking to her, I'm like, that sounds like segregation. She goes, no. I said, that's pretty much what it is, because it's only gonna come down to one of two things: you're gonna make another league just for trans athletes, and if you do that. And I point out this possibility: if you point out a league for just trans athletes who play on there, and then you have it done, do you think those scouts from the NCAA are going to care? For example, and I make this point wholeheartedly so, if a 6'7" trans athlete who identifies as a woman wants to play in women's basketball in college, NCAA will welcome them with open arms. But say that same individual who's playing at the same school as your hypothetical daughter, and they turn around and give that trans athlete the scholarship, and they were playing on a different team other than your daughter, who was playing on a women's basketball team, and they turn around and still pick the trans athlete. Let me ask you this question: are you gonna be mad that the trans athlete got the scholarship to something you thought your daughter deserved, or are you gonna be mad at the NCAA for being progressive? Because that's the only way it's gonna happen. That's how it's going to move forward. They're going to start giving those scholarships out, and you're going to see very quickly how many people are going to be, you're going to be mad, but are you going to be mad at the college now? Oh, we're going to boycott BYU. We're going to boycott Penn State. We're going to boycott University of Florida because they're picking up trans athletes. And as long as those trans athletes win championships, those booster monies will still be rolling in. NCAA will still be raking in nearly $3 billion and more every year. And at the same time, your complaints will go mute. But good luck, Texas, because apparently you're going for the trifecta and just ticking everybody off. You done already ticked off women. You've already ticked off women. You've ticked off immigrants. Now you're going to try to tick off trans athletes. Yep, Texas is definitely the king of the Hold My Beer competition so far. But I did also want to cover this story as well, because speaking of idiots, Tennessee is limiting their monoclonal antibody treatments to unvaccinated residents. I talked about this last week, where you have a whole bunch of people who will not take the vaccine, but will gladly get this monoclonal antibody treatment because they think that's smart, which is really stupid. Monoclonal antibody treatments are very expensive and really only given to those in the most critical of treatments. Increases of the use of this treatment has increased in Tennessee by nearly 50%. And one doctor did point out in this, I'm just going to read this real quick. Extraordinary demand coupled with the federal government's need to cap shipments of these scarce drugs forced Tennessee health officials to recommend limiting the treatment to unvaccinated patients with the worst cases of COVID-19. Doing so raises ethical questions, public experts said, about who should get this treatment and who shouldn't. For example, quote unquote, if a patient has a heart transplant to receive the vaccine but is still at severe risk of COVID-19, was denied access to antibody treatment, could have reduced the severity of the infection, how is it fair? Asked Dr. Khan, which he's exactly right, because again, all of this could have honestly been avoided had people who did not get sick, literally and figuratively, just got the vaccine. I have sat there and said this, and I will not stop saying this. Unvaccinated people will lead to increased increased occupancy in hospitals. ICUs will be at their redlining. Monoclonal antibody treatments, which are usually used for other non-threatening injuries, like if you had surgery or if you had a transplant or things of that nature to help reduce the risk, will now unfortunately have to go to the most severe cases of COVID-19, which could have actually been avoided had people been vaccinated. I said it again, Tennessee, if we're number one in something, we are number one in the highest count of COVID cases, infections, and hospital occupancy. Because now a lot of people who go to the hospital for their treatments or operations or surgeries that they're scheduled now have to be pushed back because there's a bed or a person who's COVID-19 that is occupying that spot. And it's now starting to affect not only them, but doctors and nurses and hospital professionals as well. It's a house of cards when people don't think that your actual decision not to get vaccinated doesn't affect us all. It does. It's a ripple effect. And now we're seeing it from Tennessee's side because they won't turn around and get the vaccine, but they'll be the first one to scream monoclonal antibody treatments, not realizing that is a very expensive treatment, which 9 times out of 10 goes right back to medical debt. But I digress. Speaking of things that are beyond stupid, though, this next story of a woman who dressed up as Rosa Parks to basically protest against mask mandates is still beyond stupid.
Some dehumanizing and deeply disturbing expressions of racism in recent days involving our district. As always, our deepest concern is for the well-being of our students and our staff. Every day we work toward building an environment where every student is welcomed and safe, and there is absolutely no tolerance for racist or bullying behavior. I'm horrified, angry, and ashamed that this has happened, as is nearly every other staff member. The students of color of Newburgh deserve so much more. This goes against everything I and the vast majority of NSD staff believe, and it is unfathomably offensive. If we had the power to entirely eliminate deep-seated racism, we would, in a heartbeat. But the painful truth is that, clearly, racist behavior exists in our town, in our state, and in our world. Not just in the major and overt ways we've seen recently, but in subtle ways that affect people of color every single day. We must interrupt and respond. We must do better. It is important to remember the terrible historical context of blackface, how it has been used to misrepresent and demean black communities, and how much harm and pain it continues to cause. This behavior represents violence and evokes trauma, and it is beyond unacceptable. It's also important to acknowledge that references to our nation's horrific history of the slave trade, which were made in the recent social media incident, have devastating consequences to our students whom we love and serve. It too is beyond unacceptable. Each incident report is always taken seriously as we diligently follow our policies to investigate and to take appropriate action. In this context, we say again that Newburgh Public Schools and its staff condemn racism in all its forms in the strongest terms possible. Our administration and staff are working hard to create schools where each and every student belongs as we move forward together in our mission of safely educating students.
Crazy, isn't it? That again, a woman decided to dress up as Rosa Parks in blackface, who is now on administrative leave and will probably be fired before tomorrow. Decided to sit there and show the kids, hey, you can protest mask mandates. Let me use Rosa Parks in blackface. And yet, I still wish that critical race theory was taught in more than just law schools now. I certainly wish it was, because that you wanted to stop dumb stuff like that. That's how, in so many ways. But the last thing I got, guys, before I get out of here, before our feel good news segment, I did want to cover this story. Again, and people are killing me with this. It's like, despite record pay and perks, few people want to work in retail this holiday season. Now, if you've ever worked in retail, I have. It is not fun, especially in the sense of working in retail, because let me tell you something about the holiday season. And this is coming, and I'm gonna put it back on me for a second. Let me tell you something. As a person who used to work the holiday season a long time ago, first and foremost, it is cutthroat. Them folks come in there, don't care about you, will ask you all sorts of questions, son, get mad when their card declines, get mad when you don't have what they wanted because they called the store saying to hold it, and someone told them that it would be held, and when they get down there, they see you, it's like, where's my item? I don't know. Well, I called to hold it. Well, you believed them. That's your fault. But anybody who still works retail, first off, bless your heart. Second of all, you are a saint at this point. But I'm getting beyond the point I'm trying to do. Anyway, back to the story. So again, guys, this whole story, like, we're still in the middle of a labor shortage because a lot of retailers are now dangling perks. Retail companies are dangling perks such as triple-digit sign-on bonuses, free college tuition, and record high wages in the scramble to staff up before the holiday season. But they still are having issues filling positions. I wonder why. Because it's so funny that if you look down as we scroll down, because here's what they've done so far. Walmart planned to hire 20,000 more workers who are eligible to receive debt-free bachelor degrees through the company's Live Better You program. It's also raising its starting wage from $11 to $12 for store workers. Amazon said that it will hire 125,000 more employees at a starting wage of more than $18 per hour with a $3,000 signing bonus at certain fulfillment centers. Full-time employees will also receive health insurance, a 401k with 50% company match, and up to 20 weeks paid parental leave. Best Buy is doing the same thing, trying to fill more than 5,000 positions across its stores with a starting wage of $15 per hour plus product discounts and savings on insurance plans. Now, there's a reason why I wanted to read all this. Well, because again, if you really think about it, look at that entire part. Look at that entire paragraph again. I'll start with Walmart. Walmart wants to hire 20,000 more people. Cool. You also want to hire 20,000 more workers who are eligible for bachelor degrees through your Live Better You program. Cool. It also raised its starting wage from $11 to $12. It raised its wage from $11 to $12. And yet they wonder why they have such a hard time filling positions. Amazon, 125,000 employees with a starting wage of more than $18 per hour with a $3,000 signing bonus at certain fulfillment centers. I wonder why they're having such an issue that they're still using Amazon Flex for people who just want to come around and be able to do what they can. Interesting. Best Buy is holding a virtual job fair to fill 5,000 positions across stores with a starting wage of $15 an hour. So, you're probably wondering what I'm getting at here. I'm getting at here because you can throw all the perks, discounts, college free tuition at them if you choose to. The problem, again, is pay. Pay's still too low. Even at $18 an hour, it's still too low. That's why I stand saying, look, check the minimum wage. The minimum wage is still $7.29 since 2009. And yes, Walmart is definitely taking advantage of that because our starting off associates make $12 an hour. Yay! $12 an hour will not get you anything. Won't even get you an apartment in. Actually, $12 an hour doesn't even get you an apartment in Nashville. Oh, but what about Amazon? Amazon's offering $18 an hour in certain fulfillment stores, in certain fulfillment locations. It's not everywhere. At the same time, you don't work directly for Amazon. You probably work through a third party, which that third party will pay you probably nowhere close to $18 an hour, and you don't get the perks that direct Amazon employees do. But also you don't get that. But you get 100% of the headache that those Amazon workers go through. Oh, and Best Buy, $15 an hour in retail? Are you kidding? Just like $12 an hour, $15 an hour is not going to get you anything except maybe just enough food to come back in there and try to work it off again. Guys, I have been saying this for a while now, and I'm going to keep on saying it. For the simple fact of the matter, folks, is just that. Pay is everything. And I said a lot of people are understanding about pay. A lot of these small businesses, they're paying more, like $22 and $23 an hour, which realistically, if we're going by productivity in the U.S., it should be close to $26 an hour. But if your job is paying you $23 hours an hour and up, it's still way better off because $15 an hour, I understand the Fight for 15. I'm not knocking fightfor15.com. I think that it's a great progressive movement, and if you don't know about it, then you should. What I'm also saying is just that, for the simple fact of the matter, is just $15 is more estimated for someone who is single, no children, and has a one-bedroom apartment. And that's still, in this day and age, borderline. The only way you're going to really get people back to the way they were pre-COVID is to finally pay them, because a lot of people are realizing, but the simple fact of the matter, pay is everything. Why kill yourself 40 plus hours on end and the pay's not even worth it? Why, this work-life balance that a lot of these companies say they do, this is why I tell people all the time, I say, look, take your breaks, take your lunches, take your PTO. There is no such thing as corporate loyalty. And an older guy, older than myself, an older gentleman told me when I was very young, when I was 18, 19 years old, sat there and told me there's no such thing as corporate loyalty. The moment you are in the grave, that literally the job that you once held, that job opening will be in the newspaper faster than your obituary. You're nothing more than a body in a seat. And again, these companies aren't getting it. A lot of companies out there are starting to get it. Hence why a lot of these companies are still getting applications long after they've hired the people they needed. Why? Because people go where the money is. And if you know you're good at something and it pays well, then my friend, it is the best thing you can do for yourself. That's just being honest. But aside from that, guys, as we get to our feel-good segment, what we usually do on How the Frack We Got Here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity, but sometimes we need something, especially for the middle of the week, to really pick ourselves up and get ourselves through this thing. And I think that this story right here will definitely put some pep in yourself, a smile on your face, and make you feel like maybe the next generation will get it right. Check it out.
ABC News is showcasing our country's strength and resilience in a special series we're calling America Strong. Today we're paying a visit to Cleveland, Ohio, where the pandemic brought to light a glaring inequity and where unlikely heroes are still at work. Tina Kovac and 7th grader Natalia McFadden, reunited and in person this school year, get to work on their latest project.
When we were on quarantine and we couldn't meet in person, what did you miss the most? Probably 3D printed stuff.
Kovac runs a donor-funded robotics team at Tremont Montessori in Cleveland. These children face so many challenges. 100% of the students in Cleveland public schools qualify as economically disadvantaged under state law. For Tina Kovac, herself a proud Cleveland native, Giving these kids every opportunity is a personal mission.
When I was younger, school was everything. I grew up very poor. I didn't have a lot of role models at home.
When the pandemic closed Cleveland schools, Kovac and Cleveland Metro School District CEO Eric Gordon faced an immense challenge, staying connected to the kids.
37,000 kids all sent home to the worst connected city in the country, the highest childhood poverty in the country. We don't have the devices to send home. They don't have the internet to be connected to.
The problem in large pockets of the city, everywhere highlighted in red on this map, fewer than 40% of residents in 2017 had access to high-speed internet. Many of them were living in dead zones. Even if a resident has the means to pay for it here, big telecom companies never built the infrastructure to connect them because low-income areas offered less profit potential. And one of the students living in a dead zone, Natalia McFadden.
So I would restart it, and then it would start again, and then I would be able to get on sometimes.
Stuck with an old laptop and slow internet connection, online school proved to be a challenge.
That was the most important thing, making sure that she was connected so that she can get her education.
We learned Natalia wasn't alone on the robotics team.
How many of you had problems at the beginning connecting to reliable high-speed internet or just getting on a device at all? Who had problems? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to say everybody, right?
So, using pandemic funding, the school district bought nearly 57,000 devices for students and 23,000 hotspots. And teachers like Tina Kovac mobilized outreach and getting them out to students.
One of the things that I love about Cleveland is that we endure.
And Eric Gordon found a new partner, the nonprofit group Digital C, located smack in the middle of the most unconnected part of Cleveland, dedicated to closing the digital divide. That's where we met CEO Dorothy Baunach.
When people talk about broadband access, people do think generally, first they think of rural areas, that there's nothing out there.
Absolutely.
But you're saying right here in a great American city.
Yes.
Tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
Can't get access.
And all we need to do is tap into that pipe that's under concrete.
And get to these neighborhoods.
And get to these neighborhoods, north and south.
Using existing fiber that's already in the ground, Digital C finds ways to connect those neglected neighborhoods and direct service to homes at low cost. Baunach is hopeful the big infrastructure bill moving through Congress will give a boost to their efforts.
You talk about it like it's a civil rights issue.
It is. It's a civil rights and human rights issue. Internet won't solve everything. It won't solve the poverty of Cleveland, but you won't get out of it without it.
At Tremont Montessori, Natalia McFadden and the rest of the robotics team are back at it in person. And after the struggle of the pandemic year, Tina Kovac sees a silver lining.
It was painful, stressful, and it was hard, but it was necessary. It's something that should have been done 20 years ago to bring our kids up to, I mean, just the fact that they finally have one-to-one technology.
But the work isn't over in Cleveland. They say it takes a village, and sometimes it takes a city of teachers and families, nonprofit leaders and administrators to keep the fight alive, close that digital divide, make Cleveland strong and America strong.
I think what the pandemic did was make people, again, unable to look away at the disparities. My job is to make sure that they don't turn their head again.
And a final note there, so far, Digital C's wireless provider has connected almost 1,200 households in Cleveland. Their goal in the next 18 months, reach 50,000 households. They're going to scale it up. It's an immense task, but the pandemic seems to have shone a spotlight on it and got the community fired up about it.
Can't really knock that. Like I said before, it does take a village, and again, that goes right back to the digital divide that we definitely need to fix this country. But anyway, that's actually going to do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know that this is recorded because it's not live. But I do thank everybody for watching. Before I do, guys, here's some shameless plugging. Let me not forget about my buddy Big VZA Dot, which you can find on the Von Weatherspoon on Facebook or Big VZA on social, as he definitely has his show Smoking Trailer Sundays every Sunday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. And of course the RAF, which is like America's Funniest Home Videos, except done by World Star, every Tuesday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. He also has his Making Plays gaming channel, so definitely check that out on his Facebook at Big VZA Dot, Von Weatherspoon on Facebook or Big VZA Dot on all socials. The link at the bottom, you copy and paste that in your browser, will take to my link tree for all of my podcasts, How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and the Influence Podcast. My IG handle, BlackFox447. Definitely follow me there as I try to post interesting and funny stuff there too as well. And again, guys, COVID-19 is real. Please protect yourselves at all natures. Please wear a mask. Get vaccinated if you hadn't already done so, because the more you take care of yourselves, the more we can take care of each other and actually get out from under this pandemic. Aside from that, guys, the last thing I'll say about How the Frack We Got Here is all about staying informed. We are not trying to change minds or persuade people. We are simply trying to inform them and allow them to make up their minds for themselves. We do a lot better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs in our history and try to do things that should have been done a long time ago, like the first Madam Vice President who is black. Still from Michelle Obama in 2024. But that's going to do it for us, guys. If you're watching this on Playback, please comment if it's live. I still want to know what you guys think. And if there's other stories out there that you want us to follow or look into, please let me know at How the Frack We Got Here on Facebook or on YouTube. Thank you all for watching, guys. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll get through this. Peace.